If someone disappeared from your life without explanation, this is what has been happening behind their silence. And it's not what you think. The silence between you was never empty. It only looked that way from the outside. There were no messages, no explanations, no soft closures or honest confessions. Just space where words should have lived. Days folded into nights, and those nights folded into weeks, and still nothing came. You may have watched the silence grow and wondered what it meant. You may have searched for reasons in the quiet, looking for something that would help you understand. But silence does not explain itself. It simply expands, filling every corner of the connection until it becomes its own kind of presence. And yet, within that silence, something was always moving. Beneath the surface of what looked like stillness, emotions were gathering. Thoughts were circling. The past was not forgotten. It was simply being held in a place where neither of you could reach it. Until now, something has shifted. Not loudly, not in a way that announces itself with drama or confrontation. The shift happened quietly, almost invisibly, in the kind of space where real transformation always begins. Inside, where no one else can see. A change has taken place within them, and though they may not have spoken it aloud, the energy has already begun to move differently. You may have sensed it before you understood it. A subtle awareness that the pause between you is no longer the same, that the stillness is no longer resting, that something is pressing forward, asking to finally be acknowledged. This is not meant to unsettle you. There is no urgency here, no pressure to act or respond before you are ready. This is simply awareness. A recognition that what was once buried is now rising. That truth, no matter how long it is avoided, eventually finds its moment. And when it does not ask for permission. It simply arrives. So let these words land slowly. Do not rush to interpret or analyze. Let them settle into the places within you that already understand, the places that have been holding this story longer than your mind has been willing to admit. Because the silence between you was never peace. It was suppression dressed as distance. It was fear choosing quiet over honesty and avoidance choosing comfort over truth. What was pushed down did not dissolve. It waited. It gathered mass. And now it is ready to be seen. Before anything else unfolds, there is something you need to understand with absolute clarity. You were not wrong about what you felt. Not even slightly. The connection you sensed between yourself and this person was not a fabrication of loneliness or longing. It was not your heart creating meaning where none existed. What you felt was real. It was alive. It was present in ways that words could never fully capture, and that is precisely why it stayed with you long after the silence began. You may have spent countless hours questioning yourself, replaying conversations, rereading messages, searching for the moment where you misunderstood, where you assumed too much, where your hope outpaced reality. You may have convinced yourself that you imagined the depth of it, that you wanted it so badly you created something that was never truly there. But that is not what happened. What you felt was not fantasy dressed as intuition. It was recognition. It was your entire being responding to something that did not need to be explained because it was already understood. The body does not lie the way the mind does. The body does not build false connections to fill empty space. When your chest tightened at their voice, when your pulse shifted in their presence, when something in you softened and opened without effort, that was not imagination. That was truth arriving before logic could catch up. That was your soul recognizing something familiar in theirs, something that did not require proof because it was already felt. And this is exactly why the silence hurt the way it did. Because what you felt was not one-sided. It was not unreturned. The connection you experienced was mirrored, even if they never admitted it. Even if they pulled away before they could confirm what you already knew, what you were open to receiving. They were not ready to give, not because it was not there, but because it was too much, too real, too close to something they had been avoiding within themselves for longer than they could remember. Their silence was never born from indifference. That is the first thing you must understand if any of this is to make sense. They did not walk away because they felt nothing. They walked away because they felt too much. The weight of what was building between you pressed against something inside them that was not ready to yield. And when a person is confronted with an emotion that demands more honesty than they are prepared to offer, distance becomes the only refuge they know. This is not an excuse. It is an explanation. There is a difference. They chose silence because facing you would have meant facing themselves. It would have required them to admit that what they felt was not casual, not forgettable, not something that would simply fade with time and space. And that admission was terrifying, because once you name something real, you become responsible for it. You can no longer pretend it does not exist. You can no longer hide behind the comfort of ambiguity. So they hid. They retreated into the safety of not speaking, not reaching, not confronting. They told themselves that distance would dull what they felt, that time would do the work they were unwilling to do themselves, that eventually the intensity would fade and they could return to the version of their life that did not include the disruption you represented. But feelings do not obey silence. They do not shrink simply because they are ignored. What is buried does not decompose. It waits. It grows roots in the unconscious. It sends tendrils into dreams, into quiet moments, into the spaces between distractions. And no matter how long a person avoids what they feel, the truth does not lose patience. It simply waits for the walls to weaken. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He spoke of repression not as a solution, but as a postponement. When an emotion is too threatening to be accepted by the conscious mind, it does not disappear. It is pushed into the shadow, into the hidden parts of the psyche where it continues to live and breathe without acknowledgement. And from that dark place, it exerts influence. It shapes choices that seem unrelated. It colors moods that cannot be explained. It creates a low hum of unease that follows a person through the days without ever revealing its source. This is what they have been living with. This is what the silence created. Not peace, but pressure. Not resolution, but accumulation. Every day they did not speak, the weight grew heavier. Every moment they chose avoidance, the debt increased. And now, that debt is coming due. There is a cost to running from what is real. The body keeps the record even when the mind refuses to look. Sleep becomes shallow. Rest becomes rare. The small distractions that once numbed the ache begin to lose their power. What used to occupy the mind no longer holds attention the way it once did. And in the spaces between noise, the silence speaks louder than it ever has before. This is where they find themselves now, in the aftermath of their own avoidance, in the uncomfortable awareness that pushing you away did not bring the relief they expected. It brought absence. It brought a void shaped exactly like the connection they refused. And that void does not fill easily. It echoes. It reminds. It transforms ordinary moments into reminders of what is missing. Nights are the hardest. When the world grows still and there is nothing left to chase or fix or solve, the mind returns to what it has been avoiding. Memories surface without warning. Conversations replay with sharper clarity than they had in the moment. The sound of your voice, the way you looked at them, the feeling of being understood without having to explain, these things return in the dark and demand to be felt. Dreams carry what the waking mind refuses to hold. In sleep, there is no filter. There is no carefully constructed distance. The unconscious speaks freely, and it speaks of you, not always directly, sometimes in symbols, sometimes in feelings that linger long after waking. But the message is the same. You are not forgotten. You were never forgotten. And the silence that was supposed to erase you has only made your presence more permanent. This is the turning point, the moment when suppression stops working, when the cost of avoidance finally outweighs a fear of honesty. Something cracked open recently, something they could not repair with distraction or denial. It may have been a single moment, a memory that arrived with unexpected force, or a dream that felt more real than waking life, or a loss somewhere else in their world that suddenly made absence feel unbearable. Whatever it was, it changed the equation. The fear that once kept them silent has been replaced by a different fear, a deeper one. The fear that you might no longer be there, that the door they left open in their mind, the door they always assumed they could walk back through when they were ready, might now be closed. That the patience you showed, the space you held, the understanding you offered without condition, might finally have reached its limit. And that fear does not feel like the others. It does not feel like something that can be outrun. It feels like consequence, like the natural result of everything they chose and everything they avoided. They are beginning to see that silence was never neutral. It was a choice, and every choice carries a weight that eventually must be carried. Regret has begun to take shape, not the fleeting kind that passes with distraction, the deep kind, the kind that settles into the chest and refuses to leave. They are seeing now what they could not see before, or what they refused to see. The irreplaceable nature of what you offered, the way you listened without judgment, the way you created space for them to be exactly who they were, without performance, without pretense, the way your presence made everything feel a little more bearable, a little more possible, a little more real. They have looked for that feeling in other places, in other people, in conversations that were supposed to fill the gap. But comparison is a cruel teacher. Every interaction that falls short of what they had with you only deepens the awareness of what was lost. Others feel shallow where you felt deep. Others feel transactional where you felt genuine. Others require performance where you required only presence. And with every empty exchange, the truth becomes clearer. You were not replaceable. You were singular. And walking away from you was not freedom. It was lost disguised as escape. This awareness is not comfortable. It does not bring peace. It brings a kind of aching clarity that demands action but offers no clear path forward. They know now what they did not know before, or what they refused to admit. But knowing is not the same as doing. Awareness does not automatically become courage. And so they sit in the tension between understanding and action, wanting to reach out but not knowing how, feeling the weight of everything unsaid while still being held back by the fear of what speaking might cost. They have composed messages they never sent, typed words and deleted them, imagined conversations that never happened. In their mind, they have apologized 1,000 times. They have explained everything they could not say when it mattered. They have offered honesty they were too guarded to give before. But imagination is not action, and the distance between thinking and doing has never felt wider. Still, something is building. The pressure that has been accumulating does not release without expression. The emotions that have been contained are reaching the edges of what can be held. And whether it comes as a message, a call, or a sudden unexpected appearance, something is preparing to break through. The dam is not as strong as it once was, and when it finally gives way, you will be the one standing on the other side. But while they were drowning in the silence they created, something else was happening, something they did not expect. You were changing, not in the loud, dramatic way that demands attention, in the quiet, steady way that real transformation always occurs, beneath the surface, in the private spaces of your own becoming. At first, the silence hurt. There is no shame in admitting that. You waited for words that never came. You checked for signs that never appeared. You held space for someone who was not stepping into it, and that holding cost you something. It cost you energy. It cost you peace. It cost you nights that should have been restful and mornings that should have been light. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. The waiting stopped feeling like hope and started feeling like habit. The space you were holding stopped feeling like love and started feeling like self-abandonment. And without making a dramatic announcement, without any single moment of decision, you began to let go. It was not a severing. It was a releasing. Slowly, you withdrew the energy you had been extending toward them. You stopped reaching into the silence, looking for signs of life. You stopped asking yourself what you did wrong or what you could have done differently. You stopped treating their absence as a puzzle you were responsible for solving. And in that space, something new began to grow. You stopped proving. That was perhaps the most powerful shift of all. You stopped trying to demonstrate your worth. You stopped explaining yourself to someone who was not there to listen. You stopped bending your life around the shape of their silence. And when that stopped, you began to remember who you were before you started waiting, before you started shrinking, before you started believing that love should feel like constant effort and uncertain returns. Peace is not the absence of pain. It is the presence of something stronger. It is a quiet confidence that grows when you finally stop abandoning yourself for the sake of someone else's comfort. That is what you have been building. Not walls, not bitterness, not cold indifference, but something far more powerful. A centered stillness that does not need anyone else to validate it. A grounded knowing that your worth was never in question, even when it was not being honored. This is what they sense now. This is what frightens them more than anything else. Not your anger, not your questions, not the confrontation they might have prepared for in their mind. They could have handled those things. Anger would have meant you were still invested. Questions would have meant you still wanted answers. Confrontation would have meant you still needed something from them, and that need would have been a door they could walk through. But peace is different. Peace does not chase. Peace does not wait. Peace does not leave doors open for people who have proven they will not walk through them. Your calm signals something they did not expect. It signals that you have stopped reaching, that you are no longer organized around their presence or absence, that the space they once occupied in your attention has been reclaimed for something else, something that belongs only to you. And this realization lands with a weight they were not prepared for. Because peace is not something that can be argued with. It cannot be manipulated or negotiated. It simply is. And when someone who once held space for you arrives at peace, there's a finality to it that feels more real than any spoken goodbye. Doors close without slamming. Chapters end without dramatic conclusions. And the silence that once felt like pause begins to feel like ending. They feel this, even if you have not spoken, even if you have not announced it. Energy does not lie. Presence communicates what words cannot. And the shift in your presence has been unmistakable. You are no longer emotionally available in the way you once were. Not because you are closed, but because you are complete. You have stopped waiting for them to fill a space you have already learned to fill yourself. This is a consequence they did not anticipate. They thought time would be on their side. They thought distance would preserve the option of return. They thought that whenever they were ready, you would still be there, still holding, still waiting, still soft. But time does not pause for those who refuse to move. And waiting does not last forever, no matter how patient the heart. Jung spoke often about the cost of ignoring inner truth. He understood that the part of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge do not simply disappear. They move into the shadow, and from that hidden place, they begin to shape our lives in ways we cannot control. The longer we avoid what we feel, the more power those feelings accumulate. The more we deny our truth, the louder it eventually becomes. This is what they are experiencing now. The shadow has grown too large to ignore. The feelings they pushed away have gathered too much weight to remain buried. Every wall they built against vulnerability has begun to crack. Every defense they constructed against honesty has begun to weaken. And in that weakening, something raw and honest is demanding to be seen. The inner conflict has reached a breaking point. One part of them wants to stay safe, stay silent, stay hidden behind the familiar patterns of avoidance. But another part, a deeper part, a more honest part, wants something else entirely. It wants to speak. It wants to reach. It wants to stop hiding from what they feel and finally admit what has been true all along. This pull toward reaching out is not casual. It is not born from boredom or convenience. It is born from genuine fear, but a different fear than before. The fear of losing you completely. The fear that the peace you have found does not include them. The fear that they waited too long, and the window has closed. Guilt walks beside this fear. Guilt for the silence. Guilt for the moments when you reached and they did not respond. Guilt for letting time pass as though time alone could heal what their honesty should have addressed. Those memories return now with uncomfortable clarity. Moments when they could have spoken and chose not to. Moments when your care was met with distance. Moments when they knew what they felt and buried it anyway. That guilt does not ease with understanding. It deepens. They want to explain. Not to excuse, but to be known. They want to confess the things they could not say when fear was louder than truth. They want to apologize in a way that actually lands, not with hollow words, but with real acknowledgement of what the silence cost. They rehearse these confessions in their mind. They imagine how you might receive them. And with every rehearsal, the pressure to finally speak grows stronger. But reaching out after silence is not simple. It is not confident. It is an act of vulnerability that terrifies them because it offers no guarantees. Once they speak, they cannot return to the safety of not speaking. Once they admit what they feel, they cannot pretend they feel nothing. And they do not know what waits for them on the other side. They do not know if your peace includes them or excludes them. They do not know if the door they left open is still open, or if their silence closed it for good. And yet, something is pushing them forward. The pressure of what has been held too long. The fear of what will happen if they continue to say nothing. The growing awareness that regret tastes far worse than rejection ever could. When the silence finally breaks, everything changes. Not because breaking it guarantees reconciliation. Not because words automatically repair what time has damaged. But because silence was a pattern. Avoidance was a rhythm. And once that rhythm is interrupted, nothing can continue the way it was before. The moment they speak, truth enters a space between you in a way it never has before. Even if the words are imperfect. Even if the message is clumsy or incomplete. The act of reaching out admits that something mattered. It admits that the silence was not neutral. It admits that they feel something they can no longer contain. And that admission cannot be taken back. From that point forward, everything becomes a choice. Silence is no longer passive. Distance is no longer automatic. Every moment of not responding becomes a conscious decision. Every space between you becomes intentional in a way it never was before. And this is where your power lives. Not in their reaching, but in your response. You owe them nothing. Let that truth settle in your chest until it feels like something you know in your bones. You do not owe them access to your peace. You do not owe them your time or your energy or your attention. You do not owe them another explanation or another chance or another moment of your patience. What you built in their absence belongs to you. It was not built for them. It was not built with a hope that they would return to see it. It was built because you needed it, because you deserved it, because you refused to stay small in the silence they created. Their regret, as real as it may be, does not erase what you carried alone. The nights you spent wondering what went wrong. The mornings you woke with the weight of their absence pressing against your chest. The moments you questioned your own worth because their silence felt like a verdict on your value. None of that is erased by their sudden awareness. None of that is healed by their reaching out. Two truths can exist in the same space. They can feel genuine remorse for what they did not offer, and you can still choose to walk forward without them. They can recognize your worth now, and that recognition can still come too late to change anything. They can want access to your peace, and you can still choose to protect it. Awareness does not always mean readiness. This is something you must hold clearly as you decide how to respond, if you respond at all. Feeling something deeply is not the same as knowing how to show up for it. Understanding a mistake is not the same as being capable of doing differently. Regret without change is just emotion without direction. And you are not responsible for guiding them through a transformation they should have been willing to face on their own. You are allowed to choose peace without guilt. You are allowed to honor what you need without apology. Compassion does not require self-sacrifice. You can hold space for their humanity without offering them access to your life. These things are not contradictions. They are the marks of someone who has learned that love, real love, starts with the self. And as you stand in that truth, listen to what your body already knows. Listen to your intuition, because if the time comes when you must decide how to respond, the answer will not come from your mind. It will come from a deeper place, the place that recognized truth before the silence began, the place that knows the difference between what is real and what is convenient. If they retain, pay attention to what is steady, not what is intense. Words are easy in moments of emotion. Grand gestures are easy when guilt is fresh. Pay attention to what remains when the urgency fades. Pay attention to whether presence continues when it is no longer fueled by fear. Consistency reveals what momentary emotion cannot. Time reveals what words often hide. There is a difference between fear and responsibility. Fear rushes because it cannot tolerate discomfort. It wants immediate relief. It wants answers now because sitting with uncertainty feels unbearable. Responsibility moves differently. It is patient. It listens. It respects your space because it understands that trust is not rebuilt with urgency. It is rebuilt with presence over time, with action that matches language, with showing up even when it is not convenient. Truth feels steady. Fear feels urgent. When something is real, it does not need to convince you of itself. It does not pressure or push or demand. It allows you room to breathe. It lets you arrive at your own knowing in your own time. And when you learn to recognize that difference, you will never be confused about what is genuine and what is simply afraid of losing access. Divine timing is not about waiting endlessly for someone else to change. It is not about pausing your life in hope that they will catch up. It is about alignment. It is about trusting that what is meant for you will find you, not in the version of yourself that was shrinking to fit someone else's comfort, but in the version you are becoming now. Oh, grounded. No longer willing to abandon yourself a connection that costs more than it gives. Moving forward does not require bitterness. You do not need to close your heart to protect yourself. You do not need to become cold to become wise. The opposite is true. Growth softens what it does not harden. It teaches discernment without destroying compassion. It allows you to release what no longer fits without holding on to resentment. You can let go with love. You can close a chapter without hating the story. You can wish someone well from a distance you have chosen to maintain. These are not contradictions. They are the signs of a heart that has matured beyond the need for revenge or proof. What is meant for you does not require chasing. It will not ask you to beg or prove or perform. It will not meet you in confusion or ask you to decode its intentions. What is meant for you will recognize you. It will see you clearly, not just in your light but in your complexity. And it will choose you without hesitation. You have always been worthy of that. You have always been worthy of love that does not require you to earn it moment to moment. You have always been worthy of presence that does not disappear when presence becomes inconvenient. You have always been worthy of truth, even when truth was not what you were given. And now, standing where you are, you finally see that word for yourself. Not because someone else confirmed it. Not because the silence broke and they came back with words that validated what you always knew. But because you stopped waiting for external proof and started trusting what was already inside you. You were not wrong for feeling deeply. That depth is not a flaw. It is a capacity. It allows you to experience life in ways that many people never will. It allows you to love with a fullness that frightens those who have not learned to hold that much feeling. Do not apologize for it. Do not shrink it. The world needs more people who feel deeply, not fewer. You were not wrong for staying as long as you did. Patience is not weakness. Hope is not foolishness. You stayed because you believed in something, because you saw potential that others might have missed, because your heart does not give up easily. That is not a flaw. That is love operating the only way it knows how. And you were not wrong for finally letting go. Recognizing when something has run its course is not failure. It is wisdom. Choosing yourself after choosing someone else for so long is not selfishness. It is survival. Walking forward without closure is not weakness. It is strength of the highest kind. Every step you took made sense of the time you took it. Even the ones that hurt. Even the ones you questioned. Even the ones that feel, in hindsight, like mistakes. They were all part of your unfolding. They all taught you something about who you are and what you need. And they have all led you here, to this moment, where you stand in a peace that was hard-won and honestly owned. Honor what you have been through. It shaped you. It refined you. It stripped away the parts of you that were performing for love you should never have had to earn. What remains is real. What remains is you, not as you were before, but as you are now. Clearer, stronger, more certain of your own worth. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not broken for having taken this path. You are exactly where you are meant to be. And what comes next, whatever form it takes, will not ask you to abandon yourself the way you did before. It will not ask you to shrink or wait or wonder. It will meet you in truth. It will meet you in wholeness. It will meet you as you are, not as you perform to be. And that is more than enough. That has always been more than enough. Now you finally believe it.